So, one of the things you can do is have a regular check in and review with your team members. Okay. People want to know that they're being heard and their work is being validated, especially the younger generations. Okay. So, I recommend hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Krista Gurka, and I'm so excited to get into this episode today. Just a few housekeeping things. One, I don't know if my mic is actually working because I just moved and I got a new office set up, and I don't know if it's going directly through the computer or it's actually going through the mic. That's number one. Number two is my office is a little warm. And since I'm in the throes of menopause and are constantly having hot flashes, my fan is running in the background, directing air directly to my face. I don't know if you're going to hear the fan in the background, but this episode needs to get done. And this is how we're doing it. Hopefully, the audio is not terrible. And if it is, I will not redo this episode, but I'll fix it for the next episode. There's that. There's a hot housekeeping thing. So what we're going to talk about today has come up a lot in conversations that I've been having with people lately. So we're talking about evaluating team members and how to keep a great team. Okay. So what I'm going to do is talk to you. I'm going to give you a couple statistics. I'm also going to give you a couple things as leaders that you can do in your business to help foster a great team culture and help keep a great team if that's something that's important to you in your business. So some of the things we're going to talk about are regular check-ins and reviews, regular and consistent feedback, rewarding and praising good work, working through problems and not avoiding problems, and deciding when it's time to part ways if it comes to that in the end. All right. One of the things let's just talk about this first, because I don't think a lot of people talk about this. So, research indicates that the cost of replacing a single employee can cost anywhere between one half to two times that employee's annual salary. That is staggering. Okay. And if you're interested, that statistic is from the Society for Human Resource Management. And basically, one half to two times that person's salary. So if you have an instructor or a PT that's earning even $50,000 a year, it can cost you $25,000 up to $100,000 to replace them. Now you'd be like, why? I don't understand that. For a few reasons. We all know that nowadays it is really hard to replace people quickly. There's not that much inventory per se out there, and there's certainly not good inventory out there. If someone gives you 2 weeks notice and you have to cover those classes or cancel those classes or find a new person, train a new person, it could cost you 5, 10, 15, $20,000 to replace that person. The cost of high turnover is staggering in business. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how you can hire from the start great team members and how you can keep them and what your role is in keeping them. So what our role is in leaders, in your managers, in keeping good team members. All right. There's a saying that is people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And while I give that a little and maybe not. What are some things that we can do as managers to foster a positive environment and encourages people to stay? Okay, what are some things that we can do as managers to do that? And that is where all of the things that I just talked about come in. One of the things you can do is have a regular check in and review with your team members. Okay, people want to know that they're being heard and their work is being validated, especially the younger generations. Okay. So I recommend that when you're onboarding a new person, I don't care what role they sit in your company, if they're instructors, administrators, marketing, cleaning, any role that they're sitting, if they're employees of your company, then during the onboarding process, you should meet with them weekly. Okay. And these meetings don't need to be an hour, they could be 5 minutes. Check ins. What's working? What's not working? How can I better support you? And relay that information to them as well. So, what is working with them? What are they doing really? What needs improvement and what they could do to help support their progress? When you first start, weekly for the first month, then every other week for the second month. Okay. And then once you get into the third month, you're going to meet with them quarterly. So every quarter, you're going to have, we call them in our company, quarterly conversations. And usually they're a walk and talk. We don't meet in the studio, we walk and talk. And one of the things, there's a ton of studies out there that how walking and talking, that's why it's called a walk and talk, do really well. One, you're not looking at each other usually, you're talking next to each other. And it takes away the power over kind of situation. So when you're sitting at a desk and you as a leader sitting behind the desk and they're sitting at the other side, it feels like you're in the principal's office. Some things you can do are do walk and talk. Hey, let's go grab a coffee and talk as you're walking. Or maybe you have a round desk and you sit on the same side of the table with them. All right. Those are the kind of things you can do. So weekly when they're onboarding, and then monthly, and then quarterly once they get through their first 90 days. And it should be very specific, like what's working. They should be able to tell you what's working, what's not working, and how you can support them. And then you turn around and tell them what's working, what's not working, and how they can better support themselves. And that comes along with regular feedback, right? Quarterly, you're giving them that feedback. All right. So now you also want to listen more than you speak. This is really hard for me. I'm not super comfortable in the silence. Sometimes I'm like, oh, let's just talk. But I've learned we have 2 ears for listening and 1 mouth for speaking. So we should listen twice as much as we speak. And that's hard for me still. So I'm working on it. Okay. Now, another statistic from Gallup, which I'm sure most of you have seen Gallup, found that 1/3 of US workers feels engaged in their job. That's pretty much sucks, right? Engagement directly correlates with retention. And now, while I don't expect people to feel engaged all of the time, work is a 4-letter word for a reason. Okay. What are some strategies that we can do to boost engagement and in turn hold our key team members engaged and hold on to them? So some things, I think regular feedback is engagement. Okay. Giving them regular feedback. Praising in public. Okay. Praising and rewarding in public. And I hate the word reprimanding, but discussing other things in private. Praising in public, reprimand in private. Having team outings. We are doing, actually today, the day that I'm recording this podcast, we're having a happy hour, a team happy hour, and it's like at 3:00 in the afternoon. It's not going to be during necessarily private time. We do things like go to a little happy hour. We've done bowling. We've done meeting at someone's house. What else have we done? We've done like sip and paints. We've done a couple different things. I think it's good team outings, team engagements. All right. Keeping people engaged, having regular but not boring staff meetings. Maybe you have some sort of platform like we use Slack, where we're genuinely giving people shout outs. We actually have a Slack channel that's called Cheers to Us. And we give shout outs, sometimes daily, but at least weekly, of things that people are doing really well. All right. We have people headlines during our meetings where we talk about great things people have done that align with our core values. And we're always connecting them with our core values. For example, if someone covers at the last minute, we're like, Marcia really exemplified the we over me core value when she covered for me the last minute when I had food poisoning and couldn't come into the studio. Thank you. Okay. So that is, again, ways that you keep people engaged. We do mentorships and trainings every once in a while. So now if you're thinking, I really have a small team, that's weird. Maybe just say, hey, let's go out for coffee once a quarter and meet outside of the studio. Or remembering things that are going on in your team members' personal lives. All right. So those are little things that you can do to keep your team engaged. Talk about them. And if you see that they're not engaged, maybe having a conversation and just saying, I had this with during one of the quarterly conversations, and I had it with one of our team members, and I just said, how are you feeling about working here? Because the story that I'm telling myself, AKA thanks, shut up, Brene Brown, is you just feel like you're coming in and you're leaving. Is everything okay? Are things going on in your personal life? Are you really not happy to be here? And he made a comment that he was like, no, I didn't even realize I was doing that. So I gave him some ways to make it seem to the team that he was more engaged. And he did that. And then I shouted him out for that. I said, I'm really recognizing that you're making an effort and I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Another thing that is important to team members is usually financial compensation. It's often one of the first thing businesses think of when trying to retain employees. However, it is not always how some people are motivated. And that is one thing I have learned over the years, that not everyone is motivated by pay, by money, by salary. And there are certainly some people that are. But what are some non-financial incentives that we can do that have proven to be effective in keeping and retaining team members? Some things that have been really effective for us are the mentorship that we do. Usually once a quarter, I do a team mentorship where the instructors come in, even the front desk staff, so they can better learn how to answer questions. And we just talk about things. They ask questions about, when I have this person in class, they always are complaining about shoulder pain, and we'll go over what could that possibly be. We'll go over different cueing that is beneficial to us in classes. The front desk will ask, hey, when someone asks this on the phone, what should I tell them? And they'll ask the physical therapist or the instructors, like, when someone says, well, what's the difference between Pilates and yoga? What's a good answer to give? And we brainstorm these things together so that we're all on the same page. So that's one thing. Another thing is just listening to people. Again, listening goes a long way. I recently had a team member whose brother passed away, and she had to up and leave really quickly, and she was worried about covering her class. I was like, we got you. Don't worry. We got this. And I asked her regularly, check in with her. How are you doing? Is there anything you need? How can I best support you in this time? Okay. Being listened to, being cared for, being understood is another non-financial incentive. Continuing education. Okay. You can offer continuing education stipends. You can offer things like, and how can you do this in small businesses where maybe you don't have the resources? Maybe you can help them start a savings fund. I just got off a call with one of our inner circle members today who came up with a great idea. It's not my idea. She came up with it, and she said, I really want to help this person save because they're, single, they don't have a lot of family. And what if there's an emergency that happens? So she said, I would love to do, like, how about we take $5 from every session you see, and we put it into a savings account. And then at the end of the year, you can choose what to do with it. You can take it back as your salary, or you can let it ride in case there is an emergency that comes up. I think that's a great way. It's helping people plan, helping them, giving them understanding what their needs are and how you can help them do that. That's something really great. Maybe celebrating people's birthdays, anniversaries. Today, we are actually, during our happy hour, I'm going to be celebrating everyone in the company who's given 5 years of service. And so they're going to get a little plaque and a little massage gift certificate. So those are non-financial incentives that hopefully will mean something to the team. Okay. Keeping good talent is crucial for your business. Okay. As most of our businesses, we operate on really tight margins and lean teams. So when a team member leaves, it's hard for us to figure out how are we going to cover those people. Okay. So now let's talk about some very actionable strategies for us small business owners to consider. Okay. So the first thing that most people think about in their offer is competitive compensation and benefits. Now, we also just talked about how not everyone is motivated by salary. So, what are things that you can offer, even if you cannot offer the highest salaries? All right. Think of this: the benefits you have as a small business to a big box employer is that the employee or contractor could have a little bit of agency and autonomy. For example, on my team, most people have their standard schedules, right? And if they want to take a day off, right? And they say, let's say, for example, somebody wants to take Friday off, and they usually see 5 clients on Friday. If they can disperse those 5 clients throughout the week, they can still see those people and not lose the income and take a Friday off. Okay. They have a little more agency and autonomy over their own schedules, and flexibility, especially nowadays, can be very important. Okay. It's like worth money to some people to be able to take a Friday off to go to their kids' school fund and know that they're not missing out. Or maybe say, hey, I want to go to my kid's school event from 9 to 11. I'm just going to move my 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock to the afternoon, and everyone was cool with that. Awesome. There's not a lot of bureaucracy that they have to go through. Now, what are some other benefits that you can offer? And a lot of times small businesses have a hard time offering benefits like health insurance. So maybe you can offer a stipend. Employees can go on the open market and get their health insurance. On average, that would be about an extra $2 an hour for some people. But it goes a long way with the team member. So you're putting towards stipend without having to carry health insurance and going through that hubbaloo. Is that a word? I don't know. You can say, I'm going to pay you $2 more an hour, and that's going to go towards you paying for your own health insurance. Flexible work hours. That's another thing. I have some employees that work 7 to 2 and they love it. I have other employees that work 7 to 12. They take a little break and they come back in the afternoon. I have some employees that work 2 long days and 2 short days. So there's a flexibility of hours in as much as the studio and the clinic's coverage is being met. Are there opportunities for work from home? Nowadays, with virtual settings and telehealth, maybe you can say to your employee, hey, if you have virtual clients and you can do that while you're traveling, or you can do that from home on 1 day a week or 1 day a month, great. As long as it works for both ends, right? It's mutually beneficial for both of them. Some companies, and we do this, there are sometimes in my mastermind, there are some of us that will collaborate and we will all order merch or something from the same distributor so we get better rates. You can also become part of a business group where you can get better rates on health insurance and things like that. I think Gusto does some things like that where you become part of an EOP. And so instead of getting health benefits for just your company, 50 companies that have 5 employees are doing it. So it's a better deal for the health insurance company and for you as an employer. So those are some things you can do as well. What about professional development? That's again where CEC credit comes in. And at Pilates in the Grove, I give, if you've been with a company for 5 years or more, you get something like $2,000 a year for health, for continuing education. Now, some people will say, what if you train them all and they leave? And I would say, what if you don't train them and they stay? And you have a bunch of sucky employees that work for you. Professional and personal development for me means that my team is going to be that much better to service my clients, our clients. What about bringing in services and workshops to your area or to your studio or clinic? And this year, I hosted Anna Hartman to come teach her course in person at Pilates in the Grove. And I allowed all of mine, I didn't allow, let's not say that. I invited all of my team to participate for free. It saves me a little money from having to send them with travel and all that stuff. And I selfishly got to see Anna in person and learn from her in person. Can they attend conferences? I'm sending my manager to the Boutique Fitness Conference. That's in October in a couple weeks. Can you send your front desk to maybe like an Excel workshop or a Google workspace workshop to help them be better. Anything that's going to help your staff members be better will ultimately help you be better. And you'll get a huge return on your investment. So some people think that's cost $500. But again, it's not just the cost, it's what does that create? That shows your team that you are invested in their development and their future and helping them be better, even if it means that a year from now they leave. Okay. You giving out, right, will get a lot more for you to in return. So this is a mindset shift that has to happen of I'm giving. And a lot of us, especially us Gen X people, we were like, nobody did that for me. And I paid for all of my training and I went above and beyond. Okay, great. Pat yourself on the back. Okay. That was how it was. Now it's not how it is today. So if you don't change, you're going to die. And if you start to look at, I want to develop my team to be the best that they possibly can be. And if they feel validated, they will stay with you. Like I said, we have 3 staff members today that we're going to celebrate for being with Pilates in the Grove for 5 years. Next year, we have 2 staff members that are going to celebrate 10 years. It's amazing that they can put up with me for that long. So these are things, right? Professional development. Another thing, open communication. You want to foster an environment where they feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, concerns, and suggestions. And I also think that you can have boundaries about that. You don't want to have, like, when I say an open door policy, I'm not good with people just bouncing into my office and being like, hey, can we talk? I'm not so good at that because I'm usually in deep thought about something else. So maybe you can have office hours, or you can say Mondays from 10 to 11 or 10 to 12, I'm available to meet. Or after we do our staff meetings, I'm available to meet for 30 minutes, or send me an email and I'll be available for X amount of time. Okay. If you do not want to do that, if you are a person that's, I do not have time or the bandwidth or the energy to have these conversations, put someone else in charge of that. A manager, a supervisor. Okay. Regular check-ins with them help them understand. So this is where their quarterly conversations come in. They help them understand where they are on their trajectory to meet your expectations. And it's important that if you have expectations, you clearly express and articulate those expectations to your team. So if your expectation is for every team member to arrive 5 minutes before their start time, and you never tell them that, how are they going to know that? So if they arrive on time, their class starts at 10 and they arrive at 10, they think that they're doing the right thing. And if it's driving you crazy, but you never told them you need them to be in studio, in clinic by 9:55, how do they know? They cannot read our mind. Excuse me. So make sure that you clearly articulate what your expectations are, whatever they are. If it's that, hey, if I send you an email, my expectation is just you're going to give me a thumbs up. You're going to say, great, I got it. Whatever that is, if communication is important to you as well. If your expectation is that they have documentation done by the end of the work week, make sure that is written down and clearly communicated. Making sure to have a back and forth of open communication goes a really long way. People want to know they are being heard. Listen more than you speak. And we have to, as owners, as leaders, do away with that thought of, well, that's not how I would do it. We have to stop expecting ourselves and our team. And while that's hard and challenging for some people, it's what creates an environment where people want to stay. And ultimately, that is what we want. What about opportunities for advancement? Even in small companies, we can highlight potential paths for career growth. And so this is something that I do with my team. I have a rubric, a very specific rubric that I share with them when they start at the company, of exactly what they need to do to get to the next pay tier, and then the next pay tier, and then the next pay tier. It is literally, it's very literal and objective. For instructors, for example, we evaluate them on six principles, like 6 principles of Pilates, right? And there are points for each level of advancement. So I'll give you an example. So the first part of the rubric is new guests, right? So if you have a new person in your class and you introduce yourself to them and you ask their name and then you acknowledge them at the end of class, that is worth 5 points. If you have a new person and you introduce them, you introduce yourself to them, you ask their name, you ask if they have any injuries, you ask if they've done Pilates, you reach out to them in the middle of class, and then you acknowledge them at the end of class, that's worth 10 points. Okay. And if you have a new person in class and you do all of those other things, plus you introduce them to their neighbor and you say, hey, this is Sandy. She comes to all the classes. If you need, just watch her. If you have any questions, you introduce Sandy to her. After the class, you talk to them about what's the next step and you walk them to the front desk. That's worth 15 points. Okay. So we evaluate our instructors regularly. We pop into classes and we do this scorecard, and it's demonstration. How do they demonstrate? What's their flow of class? Do they have any new clients? What is the program design? Do they give corrections? And I can't remember what the sixth one is, and then we have other key performance indicators, KPIs, that are how much coverage did they ask for in a quarter? How many times did they help cover other people? We also do behaviors that are things like are engaged during meetings, attend their meetings, align with our mission, vision, and values. And so we add up all of those scores, and based on where they land on the score, we'll determine their pay tier. So if they're at a level where it's, I don't know, let's say 90 to 100 points, they're at this certain pay tier. If they're at a level where they're at 100 to 150 points, they go up a pay tier. If they're at a level where they're at 150 to 200 points, they go up a pay tier. Okay, so they know right from the beginning what's very objective for them to get to the new pay tiers. And by the way, people can go down in pay tier. And that's why we also do both behaviors, like things like showing up to meetings, being engaged in meetings, aligning with our core values, being a team player, because you can be a great instructor or practitioner and be sucky behind the scenes and be toxic to your work environment. So we reward both. All right. So how can they know exactly how they can move up in pay tiers and responsibilities, right? And maybe pave a different pathway to success for them. We also do things like we celebrate personal milestones. Just like I said, we're doing anniversaries, years of service, birthdays, to show that you care about your team individually. They are individuals more than your team. We regularly keep feedback loops. Again, that is performance review. So every year they get a performance review, and everything in their performance review is based on our core values. What we do is we look at that rubric to see where they fall in the rubric. If you get a 90 on a test, you get an A. If you get an 85, you get a B. It's very objective, right? So it takes the personalization out of being like, oh, Krista likes so-and-so better than she likes me. And what we do then in their performance review is we rate them based on their core values. So one of our core values is customer commitment. And so we give them a plus, which means awesome. We give them a minus, which means not so good, or we give them a plus minus, like we have to work a little better on this. And then we give them feedback on how they can get to the next level. Maybe it's so twice you had a client that was running a little late and you chose not to stay for half an hour. So we really want to see you be able to be a little more flexible with your clients. Okay, we give them that feedback on how they can improve. Okay, we address issues promptly. And this is again where I say reward in public, praise in public, reprimand in private, but do it right away. If you wait a week, a month, it loses its value. And people are like, I don't remember that's how it is. If somebody does something inappropriate or wrong, really try to discuss it with them that day in private as immediately as you can. Okay. If someone came in late again, so maybe even before they start class or right after class, say, hey, can I speak to you for a quick second? And just bring them in and say, I know I don't want to have to, we had this discussion before, but you were late again. And it really makes it hard for you to do your job when you're rushing in here. And I just need to let you that the next time this happens, XYZ. Okay, so address it properly and early before it escalates. And this is again where it's important to provide clear expectations, because if the person's, I wasn't late, I was here right at 10. And you're saying, yeah, but the policy is, remember, you have to be here 10 minutes early. And when you come right at 10, you're frazzled when you start into class, and you may not recognize it, but it sets a tone for the class when you're teaching. So that's why it's important to know to set those expectations very clearly so that everyone knows and be like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have to learn to leave my house a little sooner. Okay. Holding people accountable is important in your business. It creates structure. Everyone knows, and we're treating everyone equally. Really, by integrating a lot of these things that we spoke about today, these action steps, these strategies, it will help make keeping good team members, creating a very structured and empowered culture part of your company culture, right? And you can really significantly increase the chances of keeping your best people. All right. And the mindset is also, I'm going to do my very best to keep the best people here. Okay. I'm going to treat them so well that they're not going to want to go somewhere else. And if ultimately they do, I, as the owner, as a CEO, as a manager, have had a small part in their progress and in their journey. And they'll remember that moving forward. Okay. And they will hopefully ultimately treat you with respect when that happens. Now, I have read, one of the ways that I've been able to get to this is reading a lot of books on teamwork, on culture, on leadership, because that has been the biggest hurdle for me to overcome. I can control myself, and I have a certain level of expectations for myself. Most of us are high achievers, and it was very difficult for me, still is, to not expect that in other people. Okay. We don't want to create a bunch of mini me's. That's actually not successful in our business either. So what I'm going to leave you with are some of my favorite books on team building and leadership. And you can always get these on Amazon, but I also believe in supporting small business. So if there's a local business store, a bookstore near you, maybe go to a bookstore. Okay. So here are my top 10 books on leadership and team building. Okay. Some of them you've probably heard of, or maybe you've even read yourself. All right. Now, what we're going to do, okay, top book. I got a little distracted there. So my first book is Start With Why, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. That's Simon Sinek. Okay. So he has written, there's a couple of his books on here, but I love Start With Why is a great book because it really puts you at the forefront of figure out your why and then how to inspire everyone else on your team to get behind your why. Okay. The next book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us by Daniel Pink. Okay. Here he dives into what truly motivates individuals. It's like what we talked about. Not everyone is motivated by money, and how to use that knowledge and information to create a really good team and get them to stick around. Okay. Another Simon Sinek book, Leaders Eat Last, Why Some Teams Pull Together and Others Don't. Leaders Eat Last comes from it's the military. So the higher ups always eat last. They let I don't know that much about ranking, but cadets maybe eat first, and leaders always eat last. And it was something really interesting that he learned from the military. So that's another great book. This is probably by far my favorite team building book, my favorite. The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. All right. It's a fable. I love it. There's another book from his on here, but it's probably my favorite book. It's a really easy read. The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Okay. It's great. I talk about it all the time. Good to Great is another great book, Why Some Companies Make a Leap and Others Don't. That's by Jim Collins. That's a great book. He identifies key factors that differentiate good companies from great ones. Okay. The one hard thing I had about reading this book was he does talk about a lot of big companies, but I was able to, you can still take out what can be valuable for you as a small company. Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Okay. Excuse me. Learning How to Be Vulnerable, which was, excuse me, really hard for me as a leader. I go back to that book all the time and just remind myself, I am not responsible for someone else's emotional reaction. I am responsible to deliver my feedback in a clear and kind way. All right. Here's another one, The Culture Code. I just recently read this book. It was really good. The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups by Daniel Coyle. All right. In this book, he talks about the most successful organization and breaks down, it's good to great. He breaks down what is making them great and great group culture. So good book. All right. Multipliers. How the best leaders make everyone smarter. So there's a saying that says, the best leaders make other leaders. Okay. So the best leaders help make everyone smarter. It's by Liz Weissman. Okay. And so she offers insights on how to be the kind of leader who multiplies the strengths of their team and really tries to amplify the capabilities of their team, make them expect more from themselves. Then you have Primal Leadership, Unleashing the Power of Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman and a couple other people. This is like a tough one to get into, I will say. I actually listened to it on Audible, and it was a little hard to get into. But in the end, I took away some great feedback from this. And then again, another one of my favorite books by Patrick Lencioni is The Ideal Team Player. Okay, it talks about how the ideal team player is humble, hungry, and smart. And then, so if you want to, I would say if you read The Ideal Team Player first and then go into the 5 dysfunctions of the team, amazing. But all of these books, all 10, were really great books that I have read that have really helped me with leadership, how to understand how some of the things that I am doing are creating a toxic culture and what I can do better to be a better leader and to ultimately decide, is this a me problem? Is this an onboarding problem? Or is this a staff problem? Is this part of them? Because oftentimes it's us as leaders, okay? So if by the time you've decided that it's time to part ways with someone, it's the right thing to do and they know it's coming because you've had regular check-ins, you've given them feedback, you've rewarded and praised them in public, you've worked through some of their problems, you've given them very clear expectations of what you expect of them, a timeline for improving and ways to improve, and you've helped them along that way. When it comes to the time of saying it's time to part ways, they're probably like, thank God. Okay. What's not clear is if you don't talk to them about all of these things, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's time to part ways. Because how is it fair to them if you're afraid to give them the feedback that they're not doing a good job and then just fire them? That's not fair to them. Some of this retaining good team members the onus is on us. Okay. Having a framework for yourself is what are non-negotiables and being clear and kind to those staff members on what those are, right? And learning how to give good feedback versus not so good feedback is really crucial if you want people to stay. We have to look to ourselves as what are we doing? What can we take ownership of that contributed to this situation? I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that the sound was okay. I hope that you didn't hear the fan too much. And if it's not, I'm going to re-listen to it. And if we have to redo audio for the next one, we'll do that. If you have any questions about this, I'd love for you to reach out to me. DM me over on Instagram at Krista Gurka. And until next time, my friends, be good leaders. Do what's right for you and for your team. And until next time, bye for now.